What's up, everybody? This is Jake with the Evolve Your Fitness podcast, and I'm here to talk about some underutilized movements in many people's trainings in a lot of CrossFit gyms, some of which I'm good at programming, and some of which I'm not that great at programming and making sure that we get it in. So, with that being said, let's get it started. First up, we have strict pulling and chin-ups, and I will say a lot of gyms are getting better at programming this. I see a lot more of them programmed in a lot of different programs. But strict pull-ups and chin-ups are the foundation, or should be the foundation for building your kipping pull-up. When you're kipping, you're swinging around, you're using momentum to get your chin over the bar. And yes, there's some strength involved in there. But I find that we have a lot more success when we make sure that people are mixing in strict pull-ups, strict chin-ups, and just building up. Like a lot of times, our only goal is to, you might do a banded pull-up, and my only goal for the client is to get from, if you start with a black band, maybe get down to a green and an orange, and that shows that we have built up some strength in that upper body area, in your scapula area, and it's just building some resilience up there too. So that way, when we're swinging around doing kip and pull-ups, we're not just flinging around and hoping everything stays together, because sometimes that can be risky. If people aren't ready for kipping pull-ups, it can be really hard on their shoulders. I think I've heard that when you reach the bottom of a kip swing, you're hitting 2 times body weight, which is a lot of force. You're not doing most people aren't doing like a 2 times body weight, even back squat. But they're doing this dynamic kipping motion on their shoulder. And so I found that it greatly reduces injuries and tweaks if you can build up the strict strength. Aside from that, just so everybody knows, right? Pull-ups, palms facing out, chin-ups, palms facing your face. On top of that, it builds into other movements. People who come into the gym and they already can do 10 good strict pull-ups usually have no, you teach them a couple weeks later how to do a kipping pull-up, kipping chest to bar, and before you know it, they're doing bar muscle-ups. It's the people who don't have those strict pull-ups, strict chin-ups that take a really long time to build up to those higher level gymnastic skills. And it makes for a really long runway. It's not uncommon to find people who can do a lot of kipping pull-ups in a row, say 10 or 15, but they can't even move up to the next level. So it might be like a strict kipping chest to bar or kipping bar muscle up. Without the strength, those skills seem infinitely farther away. Aside from that, you have like rope climbs, just having that grip strength and strengthen your scapula, strengthen your biceps to hold yourself in that static position as you reset your feet. It's so much easier if you have the strict strength from strict pull-ups and chin-ups. And then on top of that, it even translates into some of your deadlifts, your grip strength, your back strength that you develop. It'll help your deadlifts, your back squats, your cleans. If you have a good upper body strength, you'll see like a lot of the higher level athletes, they do more of like a muscle clean sometimes when it's a lighter clean. And if you don't have a lot of upper body strength, that's gonna wear you out really quickly. But like I said, a lot of people are getting better at programming those. We try to program some kind of strict pulling once a week, whether it's strict pull-ups, strict chin-ups, hand over hand, rope sled pulls, or legless rope climbs. Obviously, legless rope climbs, there's a big buy in there, but we can scale those down to sit to stands. But it's really important to build that up. And that's another one I forgot to add on there is like legless rope climbs and pegboards. Those both don't happen without a decent amount of strict upper body strength. But yeah, we try to get those in once a week at least. And I just think that there's infinite utility in people doing more of those. Next up, I have bench press. When I first started CrossFit, the bench press was like a naughty word to a lot of people, right? It's, most people had come from gyms where bench press was done 3 times a week. And then you get to this CrossFit thing, and the overhead press is king, or the overhead lifts are king, and some people are tight in their shoulders. So bench press kind of got, I don't know, vilified, I guess you could say. But that being said, a lot of people need it, especially the ladies in the gym. There's so many things that get better from doing the bench press. First up, which most people don't think about, is a burpee. So when you're doing burpees, you're pressing yourself off the ground. So it, the more times, the more strength you have in your arms, the more you can press your body off the ground. And you'll find that in a lot of the workouts where there's a ton of burpees, the guys tend to have faster times than the women, partially just because eventually the women's upper bodies get a little more tired. And so that slows down the burpees a little bit. And the guys are able to keep that fast pace and get off the ground a little bit faster. Um, I always look at it as like, how many times can you bench press your body weight? Or for ladies, it might be like 80% of your body weight. Um, but you'll see a direct correlation to your burpees getting better and that number going up. In addition, uh, bench press is going to make stronger arms. It isolates the arms. It makes your arms stronger. We've done cycles of bench press and done no jerks before, and come back and worked on our jerks, and everybody PRs their jerk just because their arms are stronger. You're able to support more overhead. Um, you know, Having that press out on the lockout is better. It's really amazing. It also there's also some upper back strengthening when you're doing the bench press if you're doing it right. You set that back nice and tight. You learn how to use that to support, and it builds up strength there. Um, Bench press also helps muscle ups, the press out and the muscle up. Um, Most people, if you can't do a dip, right, you're going to have a hard time with the muscle up. I know a lot of times you'll see people kipping their dips, but and the dips is another majorly underutilized movement. But the bench press will help you build towards those dips. And the nice thing about the bench press is the dip is body weight, and you can use bands, and that's great. Or you could do the gymnast thing where somebody holds your legs or something kind of weird like that. Um, but when you use the band, when you reach the bottom, you're getting supported as much as possible, and then as you go towards the top, it becomes less, so it's uneven. Whereas on the bench press, you could just scale it. You just do a lighter weight, and you can go have good form throughout the entire range of motion. It's the same weight throughout the entire range of motion, and you can go up by minuscule amounts. So I found that our metrics on muscle ups, on dips, go up quite well when we work on bench press more. Um, Now, the only caveat to that is if you struggle with flexibility, a lot of times doing more bench press, it makes that shoulder a little bit tighter and a little bit more internally rotated. And that'll make stuff like overhead squats, snatches, even to some extent, if you're really tight, jerks, all that um, gets a little bit tougher. But if you're doing your mobility work, you're working through a whole range of motion and getting variance in practicing your overhead movements, it shouldn't be that big of a problem. Next up, we have sled pushes. This is hard for a lot of gyms because you either A, don't have the space for sleds, or B, you don't have the amount of sleds. Even us, we only have 5 sleds, and we do classes of 15 people. So that's only 1 sled for every 3 people. So when I program them, I have to be very intentional about how I program and make sure that we don't, um, you know, over program our sled work, and it gets to be a problem. But I love sleds. They're so simple and so brutal. There's a little bit of technique to it, but it's not like a front squat, back squat, or many of the other movements. You lean into it and you just push it. And it's something you can see out in the real world. You ever been out on a day where it's icy out, people's cars get stuck? What are you going to do? You're going to sled push that car out. You just don't have to think about it a lot. You just lean into it and go. Um, there's also a low injury risk. because of the nature of a sled push, it's only concentric motion, which means like um, the motion that when you're flexing, it's pulling your arm towards you, or when you're pushing a sled, it's pushing your leg away from you. Because it's only concentric and no eccentric, there's very low amount of soreness that happens from doing them, and B, your injury risk is a lot lower, just because more injuries seem to happen in eccentric motions than concentric. And sled pushes can be used like in a lot of different ways. You can use them for sprint type efforts where you're moving really fast. You can use them for slow grinding motions. You can also do it as a strength, like load up and do max sled push or max sled drag. And it's not, sorry, I should also put a caveat. I put sled pushes, but sled drags work well too. Reverse sled drags or dragging the sled while facing forward with the straps behind you is another great one. There's a ton of utility in that, and you can do them a ton of different ways, and they all have their benefits. But you can build up a lot of endurance off of sled pushes, and even on days where you're really sore, you can usually find yourself able to push a sled, and you'll be fine, right? Your legs are really sore. That's all right. You can still push a sled. It's not like that super painful when you go to squat down and you feel like your legs are going to buckle. And that's why I love them. And I love all different types of them. I will say we're not great at programming sled pushes as a strength. I don't do that very often. I probably should do it more. I wish our gym was a little bit bigger and we had like a turf area where the sled pushes could be a little more uniform. But honestly, it just the only with not having that, the only thing we have to do is just adjust on a daily basis based on the humidity and how much the sled sticks to the floor. So it's just a little more work for me and the coaches to make sure that we're getting the correct stimulus for the sled push for that day. So sled pushes, awesome movement, not used enough for sure. We do try to get it in at least once a week. Sometimes I'm successful. I would say like 1 out of every 4 weeks we don't have a sled. Next up, we have sprinting and plyometrics. These are both movements that I am not great at programming. Sprinting is really hard to program in well with a general population, people who haven't sprinted hard or ran hard in a long time. It requires a large lead up and progression, and you just have to be super intentional about it, and it's really hard to do. And you got to make sure you have a good warm up and everything else. But that being said, sprints, there's something just insanely primal about sprints. I think they are just one of the best basic human movements. When you do them, the next day you're sore in all sorts of places that you haven't felt in a long time. It just feels, this is how I feel, like we're just meant to sprint. And actually, if you think about it in your day-to-day life, you're more likely to sprint and run hard to catch a shopping cart that's rolling towards somebody's car, or to if you're like me and you have crazy kids, your kids are running out towards the road and you got to get them and grab them. You do it all the time in little bursts. And if you don't train it, you're likely to hurt yourself while doing it. Oh man, I ran after the shopping cart and I tweaked my hamstring or something like that. So they're amazing. And I feel like they are great for building fast twitch muscle fiber as well. Like you can really dig in hard on sprinting, and kind of almost feel like you used your legs to 100% of their capabilities, if of course you're prepared. Unlike almost any other movement out there. And I don't know. I just think there's something really special about them, and I like them. But like I said, you got to have a great lead up and progression into it, and that's really challenging to do, especially if you're doing it in a group class, because everybody, you can't monitor everybody perfectly, and it's really easy to think you're going easier than you are on those. I know I did a whole sprint progression this summer, and I struggled with that too. I guess I'm getting older too, and yeah, I struggled with uh, thinking I was going 60% when really I was probably going closer to 80 or something like that. So sprints, awesome. Plyometrics is another great one. I know in CrossFit we do a lot of box jumps and double unders, and even running is a plyometric, although most people don't think about it that way. Um, but I guess in this example, I'm talking more about more explosive, more pattern variation than we usually encounter. So some different types of plyometrics that I like. And once again, I said I'm not great at programming these in, and as I make this video, it reminds me of how I can improve as a programmer myself. But lateral skiers is a great one. That's where your foot is. How do I show this? I guess your foot is on top of a box here, and the other foot's on the ground, and then you push off of this foot, pull this foot up, and you switch, and you're just going back and forth, back and forth. Um, and those can be done a variety of ways. You can do them for height. You can do them for reps, for speed, staying low. You can kind of make out of them different things. Skater jumps, and all these have a lot of different names. So if this is the name you call them by, sorry, but this is how I've gotten to know them. Skater jumps are basically just like a lateral jump where then the trailing leg comes almost behind your like calf knee area, and then you bound back laterally. So you just a single leg jump over, jump back. These mix in a lot of times with CrossFit haters. We get a lot of people who talk about how we don't do any lateral movement, and that these mix that in, and I like them. And they're actually, you can add them into your strength. You can add them into workouts. Um, like I said, I haven't been great about programming, but in the future, this reminds me that I'm gonna do a better job at it. Next up, we have depth jumps. This is where you jump off of a box down to the ground. You don't really jump off of it. You just step off of it. And then as soon as you hit the ground, you try to jump straight up, or you might jump out into a broad jump, and just working on explosive power. Also, this goes into rebounding box jumps, which is a big hot topic right now with CrossFitters. I think rebounding box jumps are great to practice in like a strength and a controlled setting. I'm not the biggest fan of them in workouts. I feel like it's harder when you step down, and we already receive so much impact on our bodies in CrossFit with all the different movements we do. To me, it makes sense just to do step down box jumps in workouts and save the rebounding box jumps for um, in more like time settings, like whether it's for a strength or, you might do on the minute for 10 minutes, 3 rebounding box jumps at different heights or something like that. This is just a little more controlled, and make sure that you're in a good position every time you do it. And like I said, just reduces the impact, because we already do so many different movements, especially for general population. We're all getting older. I'd rather save the impact of the rebounding box jumps and use that for double unders or running or something like that. Next up, we have like skips. I've been trying to make sure in our warm-ups we work skips in a lot. I think I love the way they feel. They feel like a great warm-up, and a lot of times we can put those in instead of doing hopping on a machine, and it can work on a little bit of plyometrics without having to be super impactful. And I don't know, and there's something just to be said about a lot of people haven't skipped in a long time, and making yourself learn new movements or revisit old movements is just really good for your brain, really good for your body. Challenging yourself in different ways than you haven't challenged yourself is so important. And someday I'm going to do a whole nother podcast on that. I'm just not ready to go solo on that one. So yeah, or just yet. Sorry. Um, Jumps are super important because they build coordination, explosive power, and agility. Um, right. When we do cleans, we're building explosive power, and even like when we do fast squats, we're building explosive power. Um, but but different types of jumps and plyometrics build it, and I would say more of a real life capacity. I think, and I tell this to my legends all the time, just being able to jump on a box that normally in our legends class, we'll do like an EMOM of like 2 or 3 box jumps. And the ability to one, resist gravity and and turn those forces around and get yourself off the ground shows a tremendous amount of strength. But two, um, getting up off the ground and landing and absorbing the force is a super important thing to be able to do as you get older. Because say you trip and you step out with that foot really quick, you need to be able to be strong enough to absorb that force. And it's very similar to when you jump and land, except just like everything else that's not inside the gym. When you trip, it's chaotic. It's not in a pattern that you've practiced usually. Um, which means that it could be at a weird angle on your joints. And the more strength you can have to absorb that force and easily absorb it, the the less chance you have of injuring yourself. And a lot of people injure themselves from falling, and it could start and stem with a trip. So if the easier you can catch yourself, the less risk you have of having a major injury when you trip. And it even happens to younger people. I mean, I can recall some younger people, something as simple as like slipping on ice and having to reach out and catch yourself really quickly. If you don't practice that and practice absorbing force, it'll be hard on your body when life makes you. Um, in addition, say you're like, oh, Jake, I'm young. I don't care about injury and all that old people stuff. Um, Being able to create this force, create strong explosive force will translate into all your lifts too. It'll challenge your body in a way that it's not normally challenged, which also once again reduces the amount of how much you're getting beat up in the same areas, and it'll build. I don't know how to really describe it, but it'll kind of build just like a little pocket of strength that can help you on all the other things. And with it's better to have it than not. And it also just keeps things interesting. And for those who like to play sports, obviously, if you like to play pickup basketball on the weekends, pickleball, whatever, you know, these will translate over. And also make sure that you're prepared to do those things. In basketball, you're jumping up a lot, landing. I know in pickleball, there's a lot of problems with Achilles tear sometimes because you're backing up and then you go to sprint forward, and that load that the Achilles is under um, is something that the body hasn't handled for years and it's not ready to handle, and you'll see some tears on that. And so these sorts of things will help reduce your chances of getting injured doing all that. But yeah, that's the end of my list of underutilized movements. I could talk about this for hours and come up with other movements, but these are the ones that I think are really important. Oh, I forgot about honorable mention. I have L sits, tuck sits, and hollow holds. These are movements that I'm also not the best at programming. Um, Building up that core strength is so important. The hollow holds, the longer you can hold a hollow hold, the easier you'll find your kipping movements to be. It's the same thing as like strict pulling versus kipping pull-ups. The more strict pull-ups you can do, the better you will be on kipping pull-ups, as long as you have no mobility problems, because you just have that strength reserve. Same thing with hollow holds. The longer you can hold a hollow position, when you pass through that hollow position while doing your kipping movements, it's just a strength reserve, and it'll translate over into all your movements that have hollow holds. Same thing with L sits or tuck sits, whatever is at your ability. Um, but those don't get programmed near enough, and I don't program them near enough. I tend to be pretty good at programming pass throughs, which we do on parallettes. I like to do those a lot. In place like a toes to bar or something like that. If I kind of look at it as like a toes to bar where you don't have to hang from the bar. If we've been doing a lot of hanging, I like to use them as a way to give the shoulder a break. But I don't program L sits or tuck sits enough, or hollow holds for that matter. Why? I don't know. I don't think of them as often as I should. But those are great movements to add in too. They're also all low injury risk and all will benefit pretty much all your gymnastics. So, but yeah, that's all I have for this week. Another solo podcast. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to get more comfortable in front of the camera. Yeah, that's all I have. Thanks for listening. If you get a chance, like, subscribe, hit the bell, I guess. I think that's one of them. But that's all I got. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.